Today, we're met with Rob Hollingsworth, founder of Plant Your Flag. Thank you for joining. And if you could just introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll jump into what your organization is getting into.
Yeah, thank you for having me. First off, like you, military veteran. I was in the Navy. I was a dog handler. Um, After that, I left the military, got into law enforcement, went into policing in the Las Vegas Valley for the Henderson Police Department. After that, I did 3 years there, and then my wife and I decided we wanted to get back home to family, which is up in Washington State. So in 2019, I went up there, did another 3 years there. I was on a SWAT there. And then conditions changed. So for family reasons, I left not only the profession, but also the state, moved to the East Coast. One common thing that I always saw in both the military and law enforcement was you would hear guys say, well, I'm over this, or I want to do something else, but I don't know what else I could do, or they'd felt trapped or handcuffed, pun intended, by the money on the law enforcement side. And they might be done with it, and they're not serving themselves, their family, or even their community if they don't have their best self forward. And I always thought it was just so unfortunate that they took on that mindset, even younger guys, in their early 30s, late 20s, that kind of were over it, and they might have some, mental health issues or family reasons why. And so it's about every day somebody contacts me like, hey, I'm thinking about getting out of this. And it's not an encouraging thing to do. It's like, we need great police officers and career military people, and it's awesome. So if that's for you, that's great. But a lot of us, want to go into different things and find different passions. So what Plant Your Flag was basically designed around is specifically how to allow military veterans and law enforcement officers who've made that decision to transfer into something, the ability to do it so in like a fully comprehensive, we do physical, mental, and spiritual and professional guidance and coaching. And it's just a community there's really no others. You'll see some resume helpers for the military vets getting out, and that's just a resume. So I have nutritionists, I have mental health organizations, 22-0, which I'm sure you're familiar with,
Right.
And so it's a great place for other guys to come connect, and women connect with other people that are going through the same thing at the same time. So
No, that's awesome. I really wish I would have known something about that. I think I transitioned from active duty EOD to I was a Home Depot inventory manager. And I was like, what is this? And it was like, I remember
no offense,
yeah,
offense, but I always refer to it as, do you really want to work at Home Depot when you get out?
it was 100% that. And I got fired because I was not good at that, because I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I went from EOD to this. And I was like, man, it just didn't make any sense. Like, there not only was only making like $15 an hour, but on that, it was just like, I don't want to do this stuff. And then I realized there's a whole industry out there for civilian side of EOD. There was no one that really like informed me of it. When I got started in that adventure, then it was like, oh, a lot of doors open. Then like you said, the resume building and stuff like that. It was stuff that I didn't know anything about for that industry. What you're doing is awesome. And I was going to ask you, what was your transition like from Navy to cop? Was it like a natural thing? I'd imagine you had a lot of interaction with since you were a dog handler with police officers, but was it a smooth transition?
Yeah. So I ran a bomb dog, so I actually didn't have any interaction with officers when I was in the military. Okay. But it was, similar environments, pseudo military, whatever. But my goal was always to become a law enforcement officer stateside. I considered federal. I looked into the CIA. I even had an opportunity to go there, ATF. But I spent so many months overseas that I was kind of over it, or over the government telling me where I was going to live or go.
Yep.
And I had been married and overseas first couple of years of being married. So, Vegas was kind of a good spot for me. I really enjoyed it there. But the transition was pretty quick. I got hired maybe 2 months out of transitioning out of the Navy. So it was pretty swift and easy.
That's awesome. So I imagine you were inspired to do Plant Your Flag because of the horror stories. Since then, have you got any like positive stories? Like people are like, thank you so much. This is really helpful. Things of that nature.
Yeah, that's exactly why I've started. I mean, like I said earlier, just hearing these guys, and I call it the black hole effect. So these guys, I say guys, ladies, you're not immune as well, but you take all of this stuff you're supposed to see, you take your sense of identity, you take your mental health, your physical health or lack thereof, and if you think that you're going to have a successful transition out into civilian world or into entrepreneurship or into another professional capacity with being out of shape, be physically and mentally, spiritually, you're beat down. I mean, I was on graveyard for 10 years. So what does that do to your body?
Right.
And then you hear, the average law enforcement officer lives 5 years, one that does retirement. So after, they retire, they on average live 5 years. What kind of life is that?
Yeah.
And I know we can go into the suicide rates, which is more prominent for law enforcement officers than even the military per capita. And I think a big part of that is they feel hopeless. They lose their sense of identity, their physical, mental. Like I'll keep beating that down because that's so true. So for me, for my transition, I never had any like suicidal ideations, but I mean, there was definitely some struggles and mental lapse. And after about 6 months, I reached out and started going through therapies as boxes kind of started to uncheck, and you kind of subconsciously start easing your way out of it and just kind of just letting go of stuff. But you get flooded with, whatever's behind those doors. So I saw a need for this, and I said, well, wouldn't it be great if I had other people? Being an entrepreneur is, they say it's lonely. It is, but think about leaving law enforcement. Like there's people that I considered friends that don't even talk to me anymore just because I left law enforcement.
That's wild.
There's still some that, of course, do. We have good relationships.
Yeah.
That sense of self, and I'll always feel like a cop, but I'll always feel like I'm in the Navy. It's just kind of one of those things you just kind of got to let go and take a knee is what I like to say. Just take a knee and get some help. So
yeah, I definitely went through the same transition when I left DOD. It was like that was a brotherhood. It was a bond. The people that you talk to is like you never felt alone. You always felt like you had someone there to support, someone there to talk to about those dark moments, or if you're struggling. Like back then, we didn't really talk about like the real stuff. We always beat around the bush or made jokes about it. But now that we're getting out and we're all outside and working on mental health, it's been fun reconnecting with those guys. And I don't know. I hope things of this nature like promote more of that on the way out. You were talking about not suicidal ideation, but suicide rates in police officers, PTSD, things of that nature. Would you say the mental health aspect of a police officer is on par with what you experienced in the military, or worse or better?
I would say it's case by case, but for me, law enforcement was exponentially worse, or if that's the proper word to use.
Lack of support, I should say.
Yeah, it depends on the department, but here's like the big kickers is, and you're still exposed to this stuff in the military, but like constant stuff with children, constant stuff with family, vehicle accidents. And it's not like it's this incident or this tour, like in the military. It's like every day.
Yeah.
It's like I eat lunch 10 minutes after, 3 people just got killed in a fiery crash, and I'm eating lunch, writing a report about it.
Yeah. There's no getting on a plane going home. There's no leaving.
And then, you have I'm going to leave that stuff overseas, but I'm in my hometown or community, close to my community. So it's like I drive by that intersection with, my family the next day. And it's just, you're reliving it over and over and over again.
Right. No, I hear that a lot too, as well as I would say a couple years ago, like when I started my healing process and healing journey, it was like it wasn't ever really talked about police officers having this, because when people thought about PTSD, or at least in my circles, it was always like PTSD was a military thing. It's because they were deployed and they're in combat. And then I started seeing certain situations with my family who are police officers, and the things that they've went through. And the items that I struggled hardest with for me was the death of children that I saw overseas. And then I was like, these individuals have seen that on magnitudes I couldn't even express, like I didn't have any problems with the shooting that occurred with adults, or men. I slept fine, no problems. But when it was the kids, like that stuff still bothers me today. So it's like, man, I just feel like the police officers as well as nurses, like I don't know anyone else who's going to deal with atrocities with people like children and the innocent, that I struggled with. But I don't know. I just feel like that there's a void there, and it's good that people like you are out there getting involved and helping. You mentioned, was it physical health? Did your physical health decline when you got out of the military? I know you did a pretty smooth transition from from Navy to police officer, but I know that I've seen some friends as well as myself, when I didn't have that mandatory PT anymore, I kind of got fat, not kind of, like I leaned into it. It was like, oh, it's party mode, and it took me a few years to realize the connection between physical health and mental health and how they're related. But did you notice that? And what other things were you doing that improved your mental health?
So, I'll probably forget the second question, but the first question, I don't think I really slacked off too much. I've always been in pretty good shape. Now, physical health in the sense of health, right? Like I said, 10 years on graveyard.
Right. Yeah.
Let's be honest. You can't sleep that well. I'd always wake up at like noon because I'd be hungry because that's lunchtime, right? So, you're getting, I don't know, 5 hours of sleep a night, and then you're up all night. I would actually try to work out on duty. I'd go in there or walk around parking lots just to keep something, and then try to work out before shift. So it tipped off a little bit, but I've always been able to, hey, you wanted me to run a 6-minute mile and lift some weights? Let's do it. I've never strayed from that. But yeah, the toll that it takes on your body, as I think, is the crazy part. And then, other people, other officers, they're definitely letting that slip because they didn't sleep, or they don't have time, or they're working overtime, et cetera, et cetera. These areas, it's like these guys have to work 20-hour days forever just to support their family. It's crazy. So I didn't have that issue, fortunately, where I policed. But I can't imagine some of these other people. But yeah, it definitely takes a toll on your body. But and then the second question was what?
Oh, no, it's fine. I ramble and I just go on rants. So no worries at all. So physical health is really important for mental health. You're talking about coaching and coaching people on mental path. What are some other things that improved it, like whether it be a modality of therapy or whether it be like just some mental health practice like meditation, yoga? Like, what were some things that worked for you?
Yeah, just like how Plant Your Flag, we're taking a comprehensive approach and hitting all aspects, right? Well, everything has to be fired on all cylinders. If your physical health is slacking, your mental health and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So we just harp on that. And for me, my physical was up, but I wasn't getting all that I can out of my workouts because your mental health's not there. You're just maybe not into it. So you're not getting everything. You're not getting all the juice out.
Right.
So I started with, I had like a mental breakdown almost. I was still functioning and stuff, but I was like, what in the hell's going on in my head after about 6 months? Because that was the first time in 10 years where I'd actually just like kind of decompressed and just kind of let it go.
Right.
I think, even though it was probably subconscious or a little bit mixture of both. And then, I started going to just regular talk therapy, EMDR, which was kind of trippy on a couple things I did. And then Dan Jarvis with 220 actually contacted me on LinkedIn. He goes, "Hey man, I could help you with this." And he's like, it's virtual. You don't have to relive anything or talk. I'm like, really?
Yeah, right.
Of course I was like, okay. But he's a cop and vet. So I was like, all right, well, I'll try it out. And it was crazy. I've only done it one time, man. And my level of PTSD is just minimal. And so to talk about, I'll talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
They'll basically get your baseline levels. So your PTSD, your anxiety, and your depression. So my anxiety and depression were like minimal. There was basically
Sorry.
So
it cut out just a brief moment. It said it was minimal. It was basically, and it cut out for about 5 seconds.
Yeah. So my anxiety and depression was minimal. It was basically like 0.
Mm-hmm.
But my PTSD was a 63. So she tells me these numbers. This is initially prior to going through the therapy. She tells me these numbers and I go, well, I have no idea what that means. Cool. 63 out of 80. I'm like, well, what is that? And she goes, anything over 70, you're considered actively suicidal. And anything over, I think 32 or 33 is considered PTSD via combat. So I was like, oh, well, that's crazy because I didn't feel like I was that bad, unquote, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then it just kind of dawned on me. I'm like, there's probably so many officers and military guys that are cruising around at these levels thinking they're not that bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I was definitely one of those too.
Yeah. So that was kind of an eye opener. I said, all right, let me see this therapy. So I went through it, the one therapy session, and it was just like, I just feel so much lighter and just more amped and motivated.
Yeah.
To get after it. So I was like, all right, I need to get this into my program.
Nice. I did an episode with all of those guys over at 220, and it was really fun. I went through it too. I have complex PTSD, and I mean, I saw the benefits of it for sure. I would say it, if anything, opened a door, which showed me that I wasn't addressing all my issues and maybe I need to go a little bit deeper into there. So it was really beneficial and showing me that, I've got some things that I haven't really put to bed yet.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even like, I think it's always going to be a battle because even since you and I just started talking 20 minutes ago or whatever, you might say something and it brings up something in my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I forgot about that incident.
Yeah.
And so you're always going to have to go through that type of stuff because there's stuff that I remember off the top of my head. And there's stuff that I'm like, I thought I purged that information, which also probably worked itself into when I was getting out and going through all of that stuff.
Absolutely. Which is a good transition because I think mental health never stops. There's always new levels. There's always things that happen. There's always going to be different impacts. And that brings me to you. So like right now, currently, do you have any like short-term goals for your mental health, things that you'd like to try, maybe get more involved in that you read that may be helpful? For example, like one of mine is I want to start doing cold plunge. I hear it increases dopamines. It helps with recovery. I'm getting a little bit older. My body's not always as happy, and I'm like, I tried it the other day after jiu-jitsu, and it was like I had a little bit of a sore elbow. And within 3 minutes of being in an ice plunge, I got out and I was fine. I was fine for a week. So I'm like, yeah, we're going to do more of this. But do you have anything similar to that? That's maybe not that, but anything on your list that maybe you're looking to break down new boundaries or implement anything new into your like process or your routine?
Yeah. It's funny. I've seen a lot of the cold plunge. I used to do cryotherapy when I was in Vegas.
Nice.
So I think it might be kind of the similar concept.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm interested in that as well. But I've had a home gym for a few years where I work out. But the last week, we just joined another gym where I live just to get back into that routine. There's a lot of benefit to having a home gym, but there's also a lot of benefit to having a place where you need to like physically drive to and go work out. So I'm going to start going down that venture. But my
Nice.
mental health stuff, man, I think I like to help people. Um, Especially if I see them and I'm like, dude, like I went through that. So
Yeah.
let me help you.
Like here's a cheat sheet.
Yeah, well, essentially that's what plant your flag is. It's like, hey, here's a cheat sheet. We're going to quote unquote hold your hand, but
Yeah.
throw you in the fire, but give
Right.
you some tools to put it out.
Like we made all the mistakes, so you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. Speed it up. Well, you're going to make mistakes.
Yep.
You'll fail, especially. But yeah, man, I enjoy helping people, and I want to keep on the mental health and keep spreading that awareness for these people, because it's like, dude, we can't have cops and vets cruising around at those numbers and thinking they're just fine.
Yeah. No, that was one of the things that really jumped out to me when I started. I found meditation. I don't know why, but it's somewhere in my mind. I was like, you need to meditate. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. So I started down a rabbit hole of applications, trying to like figure out how to meditate, what meditating means. Like, and I landed on an app, and then I tried it. And at first I didn't really notice much, except for my brain was a bit crazy. You know, it was just like nothing but noise. And then eventually, once I was able to calm the noise, and I realized, I was like, holy crap, I'm at a 10. Like we're always at a 10. And it's just like, it's not so much like, oh, I go from 0 to 10 really fast. It's like, I just switch it on. You know, I'm just suppressing a 10 until I can't suppress it anymore, because I don't know, something small happens, which was small enough to like cause that. And I was like, holy crap. And then after that, that's what really, I guess, switched me on to the fact that, hey, I got some work, I got some stuff I need to deal with. And maybe I do have PTSD, because like back in the day, it's kind of frowned upon, you know, it was like, you don't want to be weak. You don't want your friends to see you as weak. And it was like, well, I think it's weaker to pretend you're fine. So I think it's a lot tougher for sure to dive deep into being a real person, being vulnerable with yourself.
I totally agree. And full transparency, I was the cop in the back of the room, like, what is this psych guy doing in here? We're good.
Yep.
And yeah, it's unfortunately a lot of these people, they don't know, they just don't realize it, man. When they get out, I want to get to them before they get out and they sink deeper into a hole.
Yeah.
It's like, let's get you kick-started right when you get out, or right before you get out. Here's the tools. Yeah. Don't do this stuff that we did. Don't fall into this trap, and don't sink in further into what you're doing. A lot of these people, they'll get out and they'll replace a job they are over with a job that they don't like. It's like, do you really want a job? Like, if you want a job, we can help you get a new job. Personally, I don't want a job. I don't want to work for anybody but myself.
Yep.
So it's just, why would you do that? Because you're not going to solve anything. You're just replacing one void with another.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just unfortunate, but I know there's a huge need for it.
Yeah. You mentioned when we talked last time about setting SMART goals. I was just wondering if you could give an example of like, what are some SMART goals that someone could set for themselves?
That kind of depends what they want to do. So the SMART goals, they're specific. So
well,
they're specific to.
I'll make it a little bit easier, hopefully. Break it down in like departments. So 1, mental health, physical health. You mentioned dieting, you know, and then career. Like if you're just to give like, okay, if you have no idea where we're going, this is what I'd recommend, just real basic starts.
Yeah. So like a specific goal for like mental health would be, all right, I'm going to start therapy, or I want to, it's kind of tough because it would be more geared towards, well, I want to solve my mental health or something. That's the goal you want to get to. It's the end game. And then it's measurable, you know, attainable, realistic, and timely goals built backwards on that.
Right.
So the SMART goals, basically in Plant Your Flag, we have a motto, we like to think big, right? So think big. Like I use the Home Depot. Again, no offense.
Send it.
Do you really want to leave law enforcement to go work at Home Depot? Most people are going to be like, least I wouldn't be in the military. And it's like, yeah, but you hear yourself right now.
Yeah.
Like just me saying that right now sounds terrible. It's like, and that's what they say.
Mm-hmm.
So what we like to say is, okay, well, what do you want to do? Because you have a golden opportunity right now to write a whole new chapter.
Yeah.
So let's not continue down this path of dysfunctionality. Let's set a goal that you want to do and let's actually work towards it. Like you're going to fail and you'll press through it. And here you go. Here's your support. So we would say, okay, I want to start a $10 million company.
Mm-hmm.
Or I want to start I don't know. I want to start a firearms business, training people to do firearms.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would work it backwards and say, okay, so that's your specific goal. And then we'd say, all right, now let's set some smaller goals. What do you need to do to get to that business? Okay, you need to form an LLC, et cetera, et cetera. Are these goals attainable? Are they realistic? And then let's put a timeline on it. So we're continuing to move forward. Because these people will get out and they'll say, oh, I want to do firearms training, and they'll never go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say, well, I it costs money. I can't quit my job. It's like, okay, well, so a goal for you to transition would be to save how much money? And so you could leave law enforcement. Oh, right. I need $10,000 to start my business. Okay. So now what do you need to do to get $10,000?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I need to work overtime this amount per week. Cool. That's a goal. So nice. That's what we do, but we like to think big. We don't like to have people go work at Home Depot when they get out.
Nope, that's awesome. I wouldn't recommend it either. It was miserable. I took so many naps in a handicapped bathroom. It'd be embarrassing if I was to break that down.
Dude, I got hired as a firefighter. I lasted 3 weeks. It was the worst job I've ever.
A firefighter? God, it was like my dream.
Horrible.
I wanted to be a firefighter bomb squad because in New York there's both, and I was like, that's what I'm made to do, but I just never did it.
It was like, yep, this solidifies my thoughts. No offense to any firefighters listening, but it just was not for me, man. I was like, I basically got paid to clean toilets and spray showers out that were just cleaned and inventory a truck.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm good. Hard pass.
Yeah. I think one of the things for me, finding real happiness in life and purpose is to know what you want to do, just like, and it like making money is not something you want to do. That's like a benefit of doing what you want to do, so like really boil it down to like, what do you want to spend your time doing? Because I agree with you and what you're saying. Like, don't quit a job you hate to go to another job you dislike. It still sucks. Yeah. I feel like we're in a time in life right now where we're really blessed. There's so many opportunities out there to do really anything you want. It's just getting creative with figuring out how to make that your career.
And the universe, I tell this to people too, the universe sends stuff your way for a reason. It's not always an opportunity that's going to last, but most of these, or not most, I hate using the word most, a lot of these people transitioning out, they're so closed off because they might be putting themselves into a corner and they have that mentality, well, I can't do that. When for some reason, like the job on both sides, LE and the military, they take on this mentality that they are not worthy of anything. They solve everybody else's problems, but when it comes to ours, we're just mentally. Can you say handicapped still? Is that still PC?
I think mentally
handicapped, and we can't. I can't keep up. Sorry, but
no.
Yeah. But it's just. I've always been like, why? Why do you feel that way? Maybe I don't know. I've always been able to push through adversity and failure, which is why entrepreneurship is probably for me.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of it, but yeah.
Yeah. I think it was fear. There's a time there I was like, man, maybe I will stay in. And then, I look around the room and I see some of the ones that were staying in. Some loved it, which I did. I loved EOD, but some did it because they were too afraid to get out and do anything else. And it was like, they didn't know how to start again. And when it really boiled down, my career, I won't say I was railroaded. I had my commander send me to get a psych evaluation, and they basically found me unfit. They're like, you can't deploy anymore. And it just so happened to be a few months before my reenlistment. And it was like, that
Yeah.
was the decision for me. You know, I was
Yeah.
furious for years, not furious. I was unhappy because he's an amazing human being. I love Jimmy. Hopefully one day I get him on, but it was the fact that he probably saved my life by doing that. I didn't see it at the
Right.
time, but I was broken. I was a train wreck. And yeah, I don't know. When it came down to it, I didn't really have much of a choice. I felt like, because it was like the job that I was in love with isn't the same job anymore because I can't do the aspect of it I loved. So then I just jumped in
Yeah.
2 feet in and doing contract work and, you know, getting lost in the sauce, and it led me to Hawaii. So it's like, yeah, that's all right. It worked out, you know?
That's similar to how mine went too. I mean, the culture around law enforcement over the last 5 years, or especially 3 or 4 years, it just I enjoy going after people, like being proactive, getting good stops, foot pursuits, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that stuff's so fun. I would still go do that, but what's the risk? And
Yeah.
for me, it's just juice wasn't worth the squeeze, even professionally, and risking my freedom and my life or my family's well-being. It just wasn't worth it. So that was kind of, railroaded, quote unquote. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I know a lot of police officers back home that, due to the climate and situation, they're just like, I don't want to do it anymore. Like it's not worth it. And I'm like, yeah, makes sense. We'll circle back to plant your flag. What are some short-term goals that you have set, say, for like the next 6 months, year? And what are some like big term, like long-term goals that you hope to aspire to reach?
So yeah, our 6 month short-term goal is 100 members.
Nice.
We're still early, but we know that there's a huge need for it. Mm-hmm. So in order to get to that goal, we're just trying to get like podcasts like yours, get the word out. We're going to probably start going to some conferences in the area, and just continuing to talk to people, and hopefully the word gets out, because ultimately we're just trying to help people. We do charge just because it does cost us money and our time. Right. So, and here's a big kicker to that. And we went back and forth, like, well, do we make it free? If somebody's offered something for free, they don't put their full effort into it.
You gotta have some skin in the game. Free.
Yeah, they don't value it. And so we're not using this to get rich or anything. It's to help people, but we need to be compensated for our time, because I do care about you, but there's a lot of people that need help, and it could be a full-time gig.
Right.
But it's affordable. It's $17.76 a month. So
yeah, not breaking a bank.
Yeah. And we like that number because we like our liberty, and everybody upheld, the laws of our country, and whether they were in the military or law enforcement. So that's why we settled on that number. But nice. Yeah, that's our short-term goal. Long-term, man, I mean, as big as it could be, because the more members we have, the more people are getting helped. And it's strength in numbers too, because we take a community-led environment. It's not just them listening to me and what I have to say, because, well, A, they're cops, so they're going to be like, "Oh, who's this? Who the hell's this guy?"
Right.
But B, it's better that way. Everybody else has had similar experiences, but they've done stuff differently. They might be going into different fields or similar fields. So, hey, man, yeah, I tried to get into the insurance world, or hey, I went into, construction or whatever. These are the mistakes I made. So you have subgroups within the main group, is the end goal. And then we'd want to see either weekly or monthly meetups in certain regions. So that's another long-term goal we have.
Nice.
Yeah, just to get some face-to-face, and so we're not just looking at a screen, because it's 2023. But I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Zooms and all that. I get it, that's where the world is, but I think there's so much value in just meet people face-to-face.
Yeah, there's less misunderstanding and confusion, I feel like, and there's not a screen that filters. Like, I feel like social media personalities. They're so abrasive. And honestly, I feel like you're starting to see a lot of that in public space now. And I'm like that wasn't normal when I was younger, to treat people with such a level of disrespect. And it's weird.
Right.
So what were we? Okay. I was thinking when we first started talking, like if someone was listening to this conversation, be like, well, there's already like resources in the military for people to go find jobs when they get out of the military. Like there's a transitioning thing. My experience with that was it was a really basic resume, and it was for jobs like Home Depot, which I think is why you hit on Home Depot. Or it was like an assistant in like an office, it was like normal jobs. Like, and I was like, this doesn't cater to anything that I've been doing for the last 6 to 8 years.
Correct.
So I feel like what you all are doing isn't just trying to transition and help people into new jobs. It's specialized in like helping them find the direction forward, something that may be more interesting, stimulating, rewarding than Home Depot, which we're going to keep hitting on. Do you know, I almost got fired because I was an inventory manager, which was fine, but every now and then I find my way into like the paint department. And this one time I mixed this lady's paint and I didn't secure the lid on it because I'm an idiot. I'm spacey, but I put it in her thing. She says, thank you. I was like, you're welcome. She goes to self-checkout, turned it sideways to scan it, and it just dumped the entire paint into the self-checkout and like just ruined the whole machine. It cost the Home Depot thousands of dollars. And after that, I wasn't allowed to touch paint. But that was not a job for me.
Yeah. Stick with bombs.
Right. I'm way better. My attention to detail, because it's life or death, like paint can shaking was, it wasn't very high on my list of important things to do. So
I was going to say one thing though.
Go for it.
Those resume builders and all those resources that they have, those are basically a feeble attempt.
It's a check
just like the military would, just like the TAPS class when I went through TAPS. I think that's what it's called still. Like, oh, you sit in this thing for a week. Here's how to write a federal resume. Yeah, and that's about it. There's nothing. Plant Your Flag is a community.
Yep. Here's USAjobs.com.
Exactly. Yeah, we have a community. We're a community. We're a movement. It's not, oh, here's how to write a resume. That's not what we're doing. It's like, hey, we're going to get together and we're going to hammer this stuff out. We're all going to succeed.
Yeah. The best jobs.
You need to have everything in order.
Yeah. And some of the best jobs I've ever had, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's all word of mouth. It's who you know, so getting involved in a community and everybody treats you everybody like family, it's like, that's how you socialize. And that's how you get into positions and jobs that you really want to do.
Well, it's funny you say that because networking from the military and law enforcement especially, they tell you be a ghost, don't be out there on the internet, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what happens when you need to go start networking? Maybe you're going to be an entrepreneur, or maybe you're trying to find another job and you have to go network. They have no skills to how to network effectively. Right. They might think they do, but you don't know what you're doing. Like, hey, how's your LinkedIn? Or, oh, we don't have that. Okay. Or they have it and there's no picture that doesn't say anything that they do, and then they're just trying to get I don't know. So that's another thing we implement into Plant Your Flag is, hey, here's how you effectively network, and we have it built into our training program, certain steps that they need to build. So that the training program kind of builds as it's an 8-week program, on top of the Zooms and the connections, etc. Right. And the therapies, but the training program, they start and they kind of ease into it, but each week it builds on each other, and you don't scrap the last week. So you just kind of implement stuff into your daily or weekly life and routine, and that's how you build it. So one of those things is networking and how to do it effectively on LinkedIn or something, and connect with people and how to approach people to tell them what you're doing or what you want to do and how you could help them, not them help you.
Right. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So we've talked a lot about your organization, what you do, goals. how do we help? How do we get involved? Like, where do we go to find your site and reach out to you? And what is that process like?
Yeah, so it's the website's www.pyftribe, so for plantyourflagtribe.com.
Mm-hmm.
We got most of the stuff on there. You can fill it out, or you can contact me directly. The email will go to either me or my business partner, who's out of the state of Georgia. But yeah, spread the word. If you know anybody that would benefit from something like this, even if they, just want to have a discovery call and just hear more about what we're doing, how we can help these people, we are here to help. But other than that, I mean, if we could build it, they will come.
Exactly. I mean, thinking about it myself, because I'm like, I always try to keep my ego in check, and it's like, I don't know everything. And now I'm curious. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, what about my social media presence or my professional presence that can I improve or I haven't thought of before? So I'm sure I'll be reaching out as soon as I get some money when I get back to actual work, and we'll see where it goes. Because currently I'm just hanging out in Hawaii. In between contracts. And when I'm in that mode, it's like, it's penny pinching, I go to the gym, I eat at home, there's no eating out, and I do fun things like sit at the beach because it's all free.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds dandy. I mean, that's personally, like on a personal level, that's my goal, is to build my other business, not Plant Your Flag. My goal specifically is to build an 8-figure business. And so once it is valued at over 8 figures, I'm going to sell it and retire and just hang with my kids. Hopefully that's within 5 years.
Nice. I think if you make short, realistic goals with a big goal in mind and they're all in the same direction, you achieve it quickly. At least it's been working for me for about the last 4 years, and it's like short term, and it's all building on itself. And like, I'm almost achieved my goals, which is similar, I don't have kids, but I just want to hang out with myself playing video games. You know what I mean? And doing this podcast.
I mean, that's everybody's dream.
Right? Because
that's the thing is like, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I love mental health. So like, listen to your stories and like people's stories like that. And like, man, what's worked for them? I find it so cool to talk to. And I'm like, man, I didn't even think of that, And it's like, I'd like the idea of sharing that with other people, because your story is going to resonate with people differently than my story will resonate with people. And it's like, this is my jam, but it's like, this is still just a hobby, and until I hit my goals in life, it's going to continue just being a hobby.
And people, here's the problem.
You said, here's the problem, and it cut out. And I was like waiting like intently. I was like, what's the problem? Go for it.
The problem is people will hear somebody like me say, I'm going to build an 8-figure company.
Yeah.
And then be like, oh yeah, sure. Because everybody wants to have that. But here's the thing. Who's willing to actually put in the work and actually try?
Yeah.
Very few, because they get imposter syndrome. Because behind closed doors or in their mind, their dark mind, they're saying, "Oh, I can't do that." They've already made up their mind to fail.
Yeah, or they're afraid to fail.
Exactly. I'm going to fail. I'm not going to fail at that end goal, but I'm going to fail along the way.
Yeah, it's not going to be smooth. Like, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do something wrong. Like, I've done it. Like, it's not smooth, but failing's winning. Failing, you're like, oh, well, I know how not to do it. And you figure out a way to do it. It's awesome. I love failing.
I failed at other things the last year plus since I got left law enforcement. I failed at other things that led me to the industry that I am, which is the roofing industry.
Yeah.
And I'm not a roofer. I don't own a roofing company, but I do consulting and, insurance related work. But it's becoming my new passion, because law enforcement was my passion since I was 10 years old. Like, I loved that.
Yeah.
So when that stops and you make that decision, it's like you finding a good passion that adds to your mental health. It adds to your physical health. It adds to your life. So that's how everything works cohesively. So you take one piece out of that pie, it's broken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. With that, I ain't got no more questions, sir. Is there anything you want to hit on, talk about? Maybe I didn't speak to well enough, or you want to elaborate a little bit on? before we jump off here?
No, I reiterate, anybody that's leaving law enforcement, the military, we can help you. I would rather you hit us up early before you get out or right after, or, as you are, versus 6+ months down the road when you've reached rock bottom, whatever that is for you. And the mental health aspect, I know this is a mental health focused podcast, so I'll reiterate that because it actually is true. That's probably the most important piece. So if you're having courage to leave, maybe you're not retiring, so you're leaving early to try new ventures, you're already having some courage there. Have the courage to get your mental health in order.
Yeah, absolutely. It's never too late. Earlier the better too. I mean, I just talked with a bunch of psychologists from Ukraine and really breaking down like the war and like the impacts on and they all said the same thing. It's like the sooner you get help, the better, and it's just because patterns of the brain, the longer you do it, the more ingrained they get, and the harder they are to break. There's one that said it like, if you do this for 5 years, the probability of you ever recovering 100% from PTSD is very hard. It's not unlikely. You're just going to have to put in extra work. And I'm like, no one told me that. It took me about 12 years to figure out I had PTSD. But awesome, man. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. And thank you for joining. And I hope you have an awesome day.
Thank you, sir. It was great. Anytime.
All right.